Welcome to the new series, Tyler, of Fill in the Blank. Let's hope you have as much fun as you did just shooting the shit on Out of the Blank. But
Thank you for
we
having
still
me.
don't have an intro, so if you think of a little catchy tune.
Um, bum 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 bum.
All right, we're using it. It's like the Meow Mix jingle. Okay, so this
No, that's stuck in my head.
what?
The meow mix.
Which one? The meow meow meow
Meow
meow.
meow 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 meow. Yeah.
All right, okay. Good God. Now I can't stop saying. All right, let's get back onto what we were focusing on. Unit 731. What does that image inspire in your head when I bring up Unit 731?
11.
What?
11. The number 11. It's all three of the numbers added together. It's 11, which is also 2.
That's what you think of when I say 731.
Immediately, yeah. Because it's all about the numbers.
Okay. What's another thing? Because I was not expecting that answer.
um,
Most people would think military.
I would say, I don't know, base of it, scientists. I mean, scientists backed by the military.
Close. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army. It undertook lethal human experimentation during the Second Sino-Japanese War from 1937 to 1945 of World War II. It was responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes carried out by Imperial Japan. Unit 731 was based at the Pyongyang district of Harbin, the largest city in the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo, now known as Northeast China. So that already does not sound like a good place. It was officially known as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of Kwangtung Army, originally set up under the Kemte Military Police of the Empire of Japan. Unit 731 was taken over and commanded until the end of the war by General Shiro Ishii, a combat medic officer in the Kwangtung Army. The facility itself was built between 1934 and 1939 and officially adopted the name Unit 731 in 1941. So at the basis of it, it is a bioweapons program where they worked on experiments, and it was known as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. That is some...
That's a fancy
That's
name.
a disguise, man.
That's a pretty fancy name. I mean, you know.
That's like our trash service,
You know.
secretly like kidnapping kids. Like, imagine
Water
that.
purification.
What do you call it? Oh, it's called the waste disposal.
Yeah, waste management.
Some kids are a waste. Yeah, some of you guys should have just
Some people might be
that's another podcast.
determined, classified as waste.
Yeah. So at least 3,000 men and women and children, from which at least 600 every year were provided by the Kemte military police, were subjected as logs to experimentation conducted by Unit 731 at the camp based in Pyongyang alone.
And that's a joke. That's a joke because it was a
We're gonna get to that.
Yeah.
But what is it?
It's the lumber mill.
Oh my God, he's got the evidence.
Yeah.
You got the knowledge in your brain. You just don't know what 731 is. You chalk it up to a math problem for some reason. Which does not include victims from other medical experimentation sites. And there's a lot of medical experimentation sites in the government, in Canada, in Soviet Russia, in Britain, all these things. But right now we're just focused on Unit 731. Unit 731 participants of Japan attest that most of the victims they experimented on were Chinese, while a lesser percentage were Soviet, Mongolian, Korean, and other allied powers. The unit received generous support from the Japanese government up until the end of the war in 1945.
Japan was always a big fan of.
They love us.
Well,
they give us so many things.
Well, back then they hated the fucking Chinese communists.
They hated us.
They hated the Soviets. They hated the communists.
It was irony, my boy.
China.
We'll do a fill in the blank on that one. Okay, formation in 1932. Surgeon General Shiro Ishii, Chief Medical Officer of the Japanese Army and protege of Army Minister Sado Araki. Now, I could be saying these names wrong. It's in Japanese, so you try it. Was placed in a command of the Army Epidemic Prevention Research Laboratory. Ishii organized a secret research group, the Togo Unit, for various chemical and biological experimentation in Manchuria. Ishii had proposed that the creation of a Japanese biological and chemical research unit in 1930 after a 2-year study trip abroad on the grounds that Western powers were developing their own programs. So he decided that the basis of basically Japan should have a secret program if everybody else is already working on doing this secret program stuff.
And that was everybody else's thought at the time.
See, everyone thought someone else was up to something secret, so everyone's like, well, why don't we have something secret?
Yeah, for sure.
One of Ishii's main...
That's the base core of espionage.
Well, you know what the crazy thing is it's a good representation for society, because if you focus on how we're all comparing ourselves to what someone else has, it's like, this is basically the government's doing it too. This giant person you're supposed to see as like an idol in a way, or a statue of what you should aspire to, you know, a certain form. And then next thing you know, they're all doing the same mistakes we do every single day. One of Ishii's main supporters inside the army was Colonel Chikakiko Kozumi, who later became Japan's health minister from 1941 to 1945. Kozumi, these names, man, it's like...
Let me give it a shot.
It's Koizume, or Zumi, that one right there. Koizumi.
Koizumi. Yeah, you're right, Koizumi.
Kids Cuisine has joined a secret poison gas research committee in 1915. During World War I, when he and other Imperial Japanese Army officers became impressed by the successful German use of chlorine gas at the Second Battle of Ypres, where the Allies suffered 15,000 casualties as a result of the chemical attack. There's one dude that's going to light me up on YouTube just screaming at me like, he's not pronouncing any of it right. I'm like, sorry. I read it how I say it. So, the special project code named Maruta used human beings for experiments. Test subjects were gathered from the surrounding population and were sometimes referred to enthusiastically as logs. So, basically they would use it in the context of like how many logs fell. The term originated as a joke as part of the staff because the official story of the facility given to local authorities was that it was a lumber mill, so you were right on that one. However, in any account by any man who worked as a junior uniformed civilian employee of the Imperial Japanese Army in Unit 731, the project was internally called Holzkohle, which is a German word for log. And a further parallel, the corpses of sacrificed subjects were disposed of by incineration. Researchers in Unit 731 also published some of their results in peer-reviewed journals, writing as though the research had been conducted on non-human primates called Manchurian monkeys or long-tailed monkeys. The test subjects were selected to give a wide cross-section of the population and include common criminals, captured bandits, and anti-Japanese partisans, political prisoners, and also people rounded up by the Kempte military police for alleged suspicious activities. They included infants to elderly and pregnant women. The members of the unit, approximately 300 researchers, included doctors and bacteriologists. Most were Japanese, although there were Chinese and Korean collaborators. Many had been desensitized to perform unpleasant experiments from experience in animal research. So, they're rounding up not just bad people, which I can understand testing on maybe bad people, like, you know, a certain, like, amount of criminals. That's a main thing even the United States government did. We did take criminals from, like, really serious crimes and stuff, like war crimes or stuff like that, and we did torture them. We did experimentation on them, but these people were not just taking them, they were taking infants, they were taking elderly people that were on the verge of death, basically, and pregnant women. They were doing a thing called, vivisection, I think it's called.
Do you know what that is?
What?
Alright, vivisection.
Yeah.
Alright?
I have it right here.
You know, the fucking, you know.
What's your interpretation of vivisection?
Alright, well,
vivisection,
alright, is something that happens, pretty commonly today, alright? Because, vivisection, the term, has been used to refer to the testing of on live animal subjects. You know, cutting into them, doing experiments on them while they're still alive, because the whole thought is that death of the subject is going to like
Create a certain result.
yeah, like disparage the correct results, essentially. And we do this commonplace nowadays with animals, you know, a lot for, you know, multiple reasons and everything. But vivisection on humans is considered torture.
Well, thousands of men, women, children, and infants interned at prisoner of war camps were subjected to vivisection, often without anesthesia and usually ending with the death of the victim. Vivisections were performed on prisoners after infecting them with various diseases. Researchers performed invasive surgeries on prisoners, removing organs to study the effects of disease on the human body. These were conducted while the patients were alive because it was thought that the death of the subject would affect the results. Just with that, imagine someone taking out your freaking kidney while you're still alive. Like, it's like the movie where the dude rips the heart out of your chest in like a karate movie and then shows it to you. Imagine someone doing that.
No, yeah, that's the entire sense of, you know, like
without any anesthesia,
illegal
so you're getting cut.
organ
They don't
harvesting.
even bonk you over the head or anything. They're just like, I'm gonna rip your fucking heart out.
You know, if you're lucky, you wake up in a bathtub full of ice.
And your kidneys are just gone.
Yeah.
And they left you like a $50 tip.
Yeah, dude, that's if you're really lucky.
Yeah.
Usually you don't even get the $50 tip.
Yeah, they just bring you back to the room.
Dude, the last time, it was just a
Remember the
tonsillitis.
last time I woke up in a bathtub filled with ice?
Man.
Prisoners had limbs amputated in order to study blood loss. Those limbs that were removed were sometimes reattached to the opposite sides of the body.
Imagine having your left arm where your right arm was. Or, say, like, trying to figure out how to walk, you know, after, you know, I mean, if you even can walk, after they cut off your fucking feet and reattach them.
I wouldn't mind having like
On the
an
back
arm
side.
on like my back. Just so
Why?
I could itch it easier.
Just itch it easier.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
I don't know if
I feel like what would be better for that? It'd be
I'm
like
still
if you had a
alive.
longer arm with like another jointed segment.
That gives me a good topic to research. I want to research human enhancement when it comes to that.
It's like human centipede shit.
Some prisoners had their stomachs surgically removed and the esophagus reattached to the intestines. Parts of organs such as the brain, lungs, and liver were removed from some prisoners. Imperial Japanese Army surgeon Kenyosa suggests that the practice of vivisection on human subjects, mostly Chinese communists, so I guess it's not a total loss, maybe, was widespread even outside Unit 731, estimating that at least 1,000 Japanese personnel were involved in the practice in mainland China. All this involvement for these... How does someone cut somebody open when they're still alive and take their esophagus and replace it with their intestine? How long do you even live in that process? Hopefully you just die when they cut your throat or something.
It'd be surprising if you.
But that's the one day you get like a freaking Doctor Strange surgeon who like knows how to like keep you alive for all this stuff. You're like, oh my god, just can I get the one guy that like doesn't know how to cut? I'm gonna cut this. You know when you cut a peanut butter sandwich?
Well, they didn't just do this with like stuff like their fucking stomachs and shit. They took out parts of these people's brains and their lungs and, you know, other vital organs.
While you were
too.
still alive.
While they were still alive.
It's not like the airplane commercial where the dude's doing his booking through on the guy's brain. Remember when he's controlling it with the pen, the surgeon?
I have not seen that one, no.
It's a funny commercial. You gotta look it up.
I will have to.
He's doing brain surgery on the guy, and he's using the...
What is it, like Travago?
Yeah, and he's like using two little needles or whatever for the brain surgery, and he's doing it, and the guy's body is moving like the arms, like he's moving the dude's motor skills while he's passed out, and he's booking his flight. He's like, what are you doing?
God.
I'm booking my flight. Well,
That is funny.
it is, right? Prisoners were injected with diseases disguised as vaccinations to study their effects. To study the effects of untreated venereal diseases, male and female prisoners were deliberately infected with syphilis and gonorrhea, then studied. Prisoners were also repeatedly subject to rape by guards. Damn. Plague fleas, infected clothing, and infected supplies encased in bombs were dropped on various targets. The resulting cholera, anthrax, and plague were estimated to have killed at least 400,000 Chinese civilians. Tularemia was tested on Chinese civilians. Imagine infecting somebody with a disease that you can cure, but you just sit there and watch them suffer. How sick do you have to be?
Imagine putting these diseases in these people, all right, to figure out how to make a better disease, to put in a biological weapon
to kill hundreds and thousands,
to
kill millions.
Again, use that same biological weapon to test on the same people you infected with those same diseases.
Unit 731 and its affiliated units, Unit 1644 and Unit 100, among others, were involved in research, development, and experimental deployment of epidemic-creating biowarfare weapons in assaults against the Chinese populace, both civilian and military, throughout World War II. Plague-infected fleas bred in the laboratories of Unit 731 and Unit 1644 were spread by low-flying airplanes upon Chinese cities, including coastal Ningbo in 1940 and Shanade, Hunan Province in 1941. This military aerial spraying killed thousands of people with bubonic plague epidemics. So they were like, screw it. You know, it brings up the fascination of kamikaze fighters. You know, kamikaze fighters? Well, you know, they would get them hooked up on, like, meth and stuff and get them, that's how they would crash it into the ships.
Imagine
to get them so pumped up with meth and
Yeah.
drugs to get them just to fly right in and kill themselves.
Yeah, imagine you going into work and your boss says, "Hey, man,
I need you to take this meth."
All right. So the fastest way, you know, inject it, snort it, smoke it, whatever. All right. Okay. All right, get in that plane. All right, and do what you need to.
Sounds like your boss is your junkie or your dealer. Well, it's ridiculous.
That's probably how it did work. Their boss was their dealer.
How far, but like just how far we like the government, any government goes just to be able to win war.
Yeah, to secure a victory.
Yeah, I mean to get the #1 trophy. They didn't want the participation trophy. They just wanted the ribbon. It is possible that Unit 731's methods and objectives were also followed in Indonesia in a case of failed experiment designed to validate a synthesized tinnitus toxide vaccine. So India used it just to try and cure something. Now, this is what freaked me out, because I outlined this because this was like something, it's a little bit like I couldn't handle. I don't like the cold. It's not fun. I mean, there are times it's nice, you know, you have a hot drink with you, but freezing sucks, you know. You experience that when you're laying in bed and, you know, you're cold as crap and even the blankets aren't enough. You're trying to wrap yourself up and next thing you know, you get too hot and then, you know, life just sucks. Okay, I know. There's bigger problems in the world like bubonic plague and experimental testing. But frostbite testing. Psychosocialist, what is that? That's psychologist. They spelled it wrong. Ha! Stupid article. Psychologist, well, that means we have to throw the article out because it's just spelled wrong. There's one misspelled. Psychologist Yoshimura Hisato conducted experiments by taking captives outside, dipping various appendages into water, and allowing the limb to freeze. Once frozen, which testimony from a Japanese officer said was determined after the frozen arms, when struck with a short stick, emitted a sound resembling that which a board gives it when it's struck. So like when you throw a rock on ice and it gets that ping, that...
Yeah.
Imagine your arm. Ice was chipped away in the area doused in water. The effects of different water temperatures were tested by bludgeoning the victim to determine if any areas were still frozen. Imagine someone freezing something off. It's like that movie Snowpiercer, where they stick the dude's arm out the window and it's too cold and next thing you know the thing breaks off. Imagine someone doing that just to test on you.
I was just thinking about that movie the other day.
Yeah, it's a good
Fucking
movie.
in the part where they go through that tunnel that they only happen to go through once a year.
That's a perfect representation of how easily we just look at someone else's life when it's not our own, or someone that we know, or family wise. Biological warfare. Japanese researchers performed tests on prisoners with bubonic plague, cholera, smallpox, botulism, and other diseases. This research, botulism, thank you, and other diseases. The research led to the development of the defoliation bacteria bomb and the flea bomb used to spread bubonic plague. Some of these bombs were designed with porcelain shells, an idea proposed by Ishii in 1938. These bombs enabled Japanese soldiers to launch biological attacks infecting agriculture, reservoirs, wells, and other areas in anthrax, plague carrier fleas, typhoid, dysentery, cholera, and other deadly pathogens. During biological bomb experiments, researchers dressed in protective suits would examine the dying victims. Infected food supplies and clothing were dropped by airplane into areas of China not occupied by Japanese forces. In addition, poisoned food and candies were given to unsuspecting victims and the results examined. They're poisoning Jolly Ranchers and giving them to kids. Now, it might not be that candy. It's probably some Japanese version. Like,
But
Joe Hoy Ranch, maybe? I don't know. It's like, what's a good Japanese candy? Koya.
beats me, man.
You can probably
Konnichiwa.
just say anything.
All right.
I don't think konnichiwa is a...
It's probably not.
That's like hello.
That is. I think that's a greeting.
In 2002, Sinead, China, site of the flea spraying attack, held an international symposium on the crimes of bacteriological warfare, which estimated that at least 580,000 people died as a result of the attack. The historian Sheldon Harris claims that 200,000 died. In addition to Chinese casualties, 1,700 Japanese in Chekiang were killed by their own biological weapons while attempting to unleash the biological agent, indicating serious issues with distribution. This can be a perfect representation to the next fill in the blank me and you should do. Chernobyl. That whole meltdown. During the final months of World War II, Japan planned to use plague as a biological weapon against San Diego, California. The plan was scheduled to launch on September 22nd, 1945, but Japan surrendered 5 weeks earlier. That was when we bombed them, right? That was Hiroshima.
That was Hiroshima and that was Nagasaki.
We got lucky with that. That was very lucky that they did not unleash this biological plague on San Diego, California. Because imagine if that spread here. Imagine that. 5 weeks. If it would have happened 5 weeks later, if we would have planned it out maybe 6 weeks out. Next thing you know, we're the ones that are Chinese or something. We're the one that's taking it. This country's not a complete opposite of what it is now. Or we could be in a decimated land. Because you got to think, when someone bombs somebody, we're going to just... if everyone starts launching nukes, how long has this world got to last?
Well, take it for example. After the atomic bomb was dropped on, I believe Hiroshima was first.
Then Nagasaki.
But
I thought Nagasaki was first, and then it was Hiroshima.
whichever one was the military base.
Nagasaki.
One
Hiroshima was the town.
was a smaller city.
Was the city, yeah. Because that was with the Wolverine.
Yeah, after Nagasaki
episode.
happened, they still didn't surrender. That's the whole reason there was a second one dropped.
Well,
they saw the power
we
of
strapped
what
our
what
peace
we
tags
had,
to
all right,
to the bombs.
and they were so confident in what they had. Their plan to unleash this world-dominating plague. Like, back then, the bubonic plague devastated Europe, all right? Imagine what it would have been like with a transportation system like the 1950s, 1940s.
I don't
all
want
right?
to imagine.
Like, it would have wiped out America, all right? A disease that most Americans, except for a small pocket in California, most Americans have never been exposed to that disease.
I'm gonna ask you a good couple questions here. One question is, not question, but this is what's gonna happen. We're gonna play a little game. There were 8 divided divisions in Unit 731. I'm gonna name off each one, and you're gonna number them off least to greatest, I guess you would say. But
Okay.
you're gonna do like out of 10. How would you like to take that one over another one? Okay, you can only use one number once. So once you pick, let's do one at 8. That's better because there's 8 divisions. All right. You understand what the game is? So if I said something about a certain division, you'd be like, I'd give it a 6. And you can't use 6 again. Alright, so you just do that until all 8 are numbered off. So if you want to write it down. Division 1, research on bubonic plague, cholera, anthrax, typhoid, and tuberculosis using live human subjects. For this purpose, a prison was constructed to contain around 300 to 400 people.
Now, what's the scale? Is 1 the worst?
1 would be the least.
1 would be the least.
Yes.
The one that I dislike the least? Or
The one that you would not want to work with the least.
So I gotta pick which one I'm working
You're a
with.
scientist.
Oh,
You're going to do
damn.
this. So you can work
Oh.
with the research on bubonic plague, and this is where all the people are. So you're going to see where everyone's at. Division.
So 1 is the least, and 8 is the greatest.
Yes.
Probably like
We'll see your. Yeah.
3.
3. Okay.
I'm gonna go with 3.
Division 2. Research for biological weapons used in the field, the production of devices to spread germs and parasites. So you'd be working with germs and parasites.
In Division 2,
Division 2.
I'm working with germs and parasites. I mean, you know what? That could be worse. We'll go with 6.
Division 3. Production of shells containing biological agents stationed in Harbin.
Oh, damn. Well, making biochemical warfare weapons.
So now you're putting together these things, the
Damn,
shells.
shit. That sounds like a shitty job. Especially since, like, they were having so many problems with distribution that if I fuck up anything, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna give that a 1. That's my least favorite.
Bacteria mass production and storage. So you'd be watching all these people keep all these weapons and all these diseases in a room.
Yeah, but that's just literally putting them in a room. I could do worse than that.
But you'd know it'd be there and you'd have the power not to stop it. Or have the power to stop it.
Yeah, I just lock the door, lose the key. I'm gonna go with 8
And they
for that
kill
one.
you.
Yeah.
Training of personnel is Division 5. What'd you give Division 4? Like a 2?
I gave it an 8, man.
That's the worst?
Wait, I thought 8 was the best.
8 would be the one that you wouldn't want to do.
8's the one I wouldn't want to do. Damn, I've done this backwards.
Okay, well we'll do it the way you're doing it.
All right, okay. Well then, 4. I'm gonna give that one a 7.
Okay,
All
7.
right, because I could. That seems like such like an easy thing, man. Like, all right. All I do is store the stuff,
And you don't look at it every day.
and then I don't look at it
And you
anymore.
go home and
yeah,
try and
and then
sleep.
and then I
you
go
go
home.
home and try and
All right?
forget about that you have
Dude,
the power to.
That's a
open up
normal
that
job
thing
for
and
the
set thing on fire.
CDC.
Okay,
Think about it, man. They do the same thing here in America. All right.
we'll get into the CDC.
Sorry, I'm going too crazy.
Division 5, training of personnel.
Training of personnel. Training of personnel to do what?
Every job they have to do. So biological warfare. If they're scientists, you got to show them how to do their get everything done. You're training these people. You're training the janitor. You're training the guy that's making the chemical bombs. You're training all of
Dude,
them.
I hate training people, so I'm gonna give that one a solid. I don't know. I'm gonna give that.
I don't hate the death of people with
yeah,
biological
you know what?
weapons.
I'm gonna-
I just hate fucking training.
I could be really on the middle of that. I just hate training people, so I'm gonna give that one a 4.
And then they somehow chalk these divisions up together, but 6 and 8 are equipment, medical, and administrative units. So you'd be working with a specific team that has a desired. I wouldn't want to do. I think I do that one of those the least. That one of the divisions 6 to 8, because working with someone that might not have the same views as I do when it comes to how this is. And you got to think they're all kind of brainwashed in a way. They're all focused on one subject, thinking that this is going to better society, but they're also bombing and basically
Okay. So
treating their own
6
people.
and 8 is basically just administrative shit for this place.
Yes,
All right.
medical and equipment.
You know.
It's just hard to think that
I
could work with
would have
someone.
to say 8 for that one.
Like, if you were completely one-sided on something and I had a completely opposite view of it, and I was supposed to act like, your opinion didn't bother me, it's going to be a little bit difficult, you know what I mean, to work with that person side by side every single day. I find that to be more difficult. When I can just train somebody and throw them off.
I feel like you really need to do that because no matter what work environment you might be in, you might have a dispute with somebody's views, all right, and they might not exactly be your own. But at the end of the day, while you're at work, what you're doing at work is what's different than what's revolving around everything in your personal life. All right, if you work with someone that has conflicting political views with you, or conflicting views on religion, something else like that, you should be able to be mature and adult enough to work past that, to be able to work together efficiently and effectively. That's not even going to be a problem.
How are you going to talk about being mature when they're chopping people's arms off and attaching them to the side of your head or some shit?
Okay, well, I wasn't talking about specifically that, all right? Obviously, if you're working in somewhere like Unit 731...
You're telling me they're infecting people with gonorrhea and there's not some dude out there laughing because the dude's dick's on fire, basically.
All right, you're talking about 731. I'm talking about in any scenario, all right? In Unit 731, I bet that a lot of these people didn't know what was going on because at certain levels, I bet, Division 1 had no idea what Division 2 did. Or Division 2 had no idea what Division 1 and 3 did.
I get what you're saying.
But maybe, it's hard to think. Maybe Division 6 through 8 knew what all of them were doing, but I bet that,
what about
a lot of the paperwork that they had on this stuff was very, very minuscule and sketchy at best, so that there were the least amount of people involved, because in the end, when they got captured, the thing that they wanted the least was evidence. They burned down their factories.
We're getting to that.
Sorry.
It's okay, but I'm glad you're on it because you're getting into it and I like it. The crazy thing is, though, how are you going to be on Division 4, then you walk by Division 2 and you look in the window or you see some dude walking by and he's got a fucking hand hanging off his chin? How did that get there, bro?
I feel like the doors wouldn't have windows so that I couldn't see that.
Yeah, you gotta have windows.
Why do you have windows? I feel like
you need some beautiful sight.
But dude, have you ever been on the inside of a secret government facility? All right, why would they have windows so that you know what's going on? Like they don't want you to know what's going on.
Maybe it's
they want you to know nothing.
Window where they can just view, and then on your side it's like a green screen of I don't know, or they just paint a nice view. So you're like, that's a window, but there's not actually a window. It's a wall, but it's just like a Roadrunner type style. You know what I'm talking about?
It could be like that, but
okay.
Back in that time in Japan, it was commonly considered that you kind of know how in Nazi Germany it was the Aryan master race or whatever. Okay, all right. The Japanese had their own form of that. All right, they literally viewed white people as barbaric and
we are barbaric.
Lesser evolved than the Japanese people were, including the Chinese.
I don't think it's white people.
The Koreans.
We all have different views on people because we all grow up in a different culture and environment.
Well, at that time, the Japanese viewed every other culture as inferior to the Japanese culture. All right, and so I'm sure that whether these people knew what was happening or not, if they found out what was happening, they probably would still go along with it because their view was, that Japanese were superior to every other race. The Chinese
we were the devil,
didn't matter.
And they didn't care, right? We were the devil.
Whether we were the devil or whether we were just lesser to them, that they looked down upon us. That they thought they were better than us,
View, man.
Because instead of them thinking oh, these guys are the devil, I bet that they just viewed us as these insignificant pests, like ants. All right, and then that's what they thought of us.
Well, that's why they were creating basically extermination.
The bubonic plague to wipe us out.
So we were just a little rat, need to be killed. So the destruction of evidence. With the coming of the Red Army in August 1945, the unit had to abandon their work in haste. The members and their families fled to Japan. Ishii ordered every member of the group to take the secret to the grave, threatening to find them if they failed and prohibiting any of them from going into public work back in Japan. Potassium cyanide vials were issued for use in the event that the remaining personnel were captured. Skeleton crews of Ishii's Japanese troops blew up in the compound in the final days of the war to destroy evidence of their activities, but most were so well constructed that they survived somewhat intact. Do you know what a skeleton crew is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's like the last remnants. It's very little amount of people there. You know, you're talking about
No. It's not skeleton crew at all.
Yeah, it is.
No, a skeleton crew is a crew of people that are specifically their job is to get rid of everything, every last bit of evidence. Russia was very popular with skeleton crews when they were known to getting rid of their secret programmings and stuff.
That's not exactly what a skeleton crew is. It's
exact
I mean,
definition.
you can use it as that, but it's really just to involve the least amount of hands as possible. Because I mean,
there's another term for that actually, and I don't actually have it pulled up. But in this article, let's say you might be right too. But in this article, skeleton crews is actually it's in multiple secret government programs, whether it was with Canada, whether it was Russia, whether it was Britain with one of the most powerful of them. Yeah, Nazi Germany's it's hidden experiments. Everyone thinks of them as the sick people with the experimentation. No, England actually had the worst, which is weird. But England also has one of the best Secret Service programs. It's the OS. I don't know if you know what that is. And if you listen to anything with Alex Jones, you'll know. But so after all this and all this experimentation, how did we forgive them?
well,
How did we just be like, oh, you're good, you're good.
So-
you made mistakes.
basically what happened was that you know, one day there was I believe he was a biologist, microbiologist. He worked with diseases, a bacteriologist, something like that. He basically came to a lot of these Japanese scientists and everything after the war, and he told them, you know, like, listen, give us your secrets and we'll give you full immunity. And at first, they didn't want to give up any of their secrets. They were willing to die for it. And then the guy was like, well, listen, either you give us your secrets, we'll try you here, or give us your secrets, you can get diplomatic immunity, or we'll try you here, and then we're going to send you over to Soviet Russia, and we're going to have them try you. And then the Japanese got really fucking scared, because they didn't want to be tried by the fucking Soviets. So...
You read that? Wait, you got all that when I sent you the article?
yeah.
Holy shit, man. Alright, okay, that makes sense. I mean, you got it. You hit the nail basically almost on the head.
So,
So
yeah, and then they gave him diplomatic immunity. They took that information to General Douglas MacArthur. He was the leader of the Allied powers at the time.
Do you have a photographic memory?
Kind of.
Okay, I figured, because
So,
there's no
but,
way. You
I
said
mean,
you looked at the article for 10 minutes.
I
and next
did,
thing you know,
but
like, I'm researching,
I
don't even
also
remember half the
knew
shit.
a lot about this.
Oh,
I
shit.
I knew that General Douglas MacArthur was the leader of the Allied powers
shit.
at the time.
No way.
But he took the secrets, and he thought it would be better to take the secrets. And at the time, there was like common policy to share what you got from like the war with your allies in the war. All right, but General Douglas MacArthur was worried about other countries that were America's allies at the time getting this information, particularly the Soviet Union. So they cut a deal with the Japanese scientists to only give them the information. And when it came to try all of the Japanese war criminals, all right, at the end of the war, they're, you know, for other reasons, you know, atrocities in like POW camps and shit like that, when there was a part that came up about, you know, human experimentation and everything, it was talked about for maybe 10 minutes, and it was easily dismissed because there was not enough evidence, because everyone had diplomatic immunity, so there was really nobody to try, and it
Okay, you were right on
just fell right through
basically the whole
the
thing.
cracks.
I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. Among the individuals in Japan after its 1945 surrender was Lieutenant Colonel Murray Sanders, who arrived in Yokohama via the American ship Sturgis in September 1945. Sanders was a highly regarded microbiologist and a member of America's Military Center for Biological Weapons. Sanders' duty was to investigate Japanese biological warfare activity. At the time of his arrival in Japan, he had no knowledge of Unit 731 was, until Sanders finally threatened the Japanese with bringing the Soviets into the picture. Little information about biological warfare was being shared with the Americans. The Japanese wanted to avoid prosecution under the Soviet legal system. So the next morning after he made his threat, Sanders received a manuscript describing Japan's involvement in biological warfare. Sanders took this information to General Douglas MacArthur, who was the supreme commander of the Allied powers, responsible for rebuilding Japan during the Allied occupations. MacArthur struck a deal with Japanese informants. He secretly granted immunity to the physicians of Unit 731, including their leader, in exchange for providing America, but not the other wartime allies, with their research on biological warfare and data from human experimentation. American occupation authorities monitored the activities of former unit members, including reading and censoring their mail. The U.S. believed that the research data was valuable and did not want other nations, particularly the Soviet Union, to acquire data on biological weapons. So you basically got it. Nice. That was a good job summing it up, man. I just kind of cleaned it up a little bit.
That's fine.
Researchal facts, but it goes the same thing. We took a lot of their scientists too, and we used a lot of their stuff. We actually used a lot of their information to create our own biological warfare. We used their research in our research, basically,
And that's not the first time it happened.
We did it with Operation Paperclip too. I don't know if you know too much about Operation Paperclip, where they split up all the Nazi Nazi scientists, and Russia got some, we got some. That's a whole nother podcast I'll get into with Operation Paperclip.
But the similarities between this and Operation Paperclip is like so much on par, because we defeated the Nazis before we defeated the Japanese. And when we defeated the Nazis, we split them all up with Operation Paperclip, like you said, and we used all of those scientists for things like the Manhattan Project, and that's what inevitably brought down Japan in the end. And it's crazy to think about. I mean, all those Japanese scientists got diplomatic immunity, but, it's crazy to think about during the Nuremberg trials, where they were trying all the Nazi war criminals. Some of those Nazi war criminals had to be extradited from places in the United States back to Germany to face trial for war crimes. One of the most famous ones, I know for a fact, he was extradited from Ohio, like Columbus, Ohio, to go back to Nazi Germany to face trial.
It's crazy to think, because people think, oh, this is just a conspiracy theory. It's like, no, there's literally evidence on all of this, where it's just people writing films, CDs, television. There were things, there are documentaries, books, everything, just explaining all of this, and it's factual evidence. It's part of history. China has tried so many times to say, forget about it. It's just like Germany. They're trying to forget the Nazis. They're trying to put that behind them. Stop thinking about that. But every time you think of Germany, you think of Nazis, because that's just one of their worst things. What's the one thing you do when you compare someone who's super evil? You say he's as bad as Hitler. You say something like that. Why is Hitler the factor for it? It's because he killed so many people and he was such a powerful force. It's just like that when we.
So did Stalin, and during World War II, he was a good friend of ours. So did fucking Emperor Tojo or Emperor Hirohito and General Tojo did in the Pacific Theater in World War II.
Well, it started out with Japan with their response to just everything that happened, and China was calling them Japanese devils, even though they knew what Japan was doing.
Mm.
When it all came out in 1981 and everything was getting produced, we have all this evidence now. We got it back then, but we have all this evidence now. We were kind of condemning them for it.
Yeah.
China was trying to take the blame off them and put it all onto Japan. Japan was trying to, ignore the whole thing, and there's a list long of apologies, but there are references in Japanese history textbooks that, are admitted to allegations in accordance with the principle of the new history of Japan, there's testimonies basically saying that we did this, and it's only small little bits, but it's also an illegal violation of freedom of speech to hide any of this information. So they're giving you a small little taste of it, and they're like, just forget about it, though. It's not that big of our history.
So
it's like,
what,
yeah,
man? I mean, if that's happening in Japan, so what? Because that shit happens here every single day.
Exactly.
How much did you actually learn about things like the Trail of Tears and
or Christopher Columbus.
or Christopher Columbus in fucking high school? Like, did you actually learn that Christopher Columbus brought smallpox to the Indians? Did you actually learn about the Trail of Tears and where like all these Mormon
History's
settlers
written by the
came
winner, and
fucking
trust me, the winner does
murdered
not
a ton
want to
of
look
people?
bad.
Fucking Indians and shit. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
besides,
You don't learn the fucking truth in, the history books and everything. You have to learn that shit by investigating for yourself.
well, the National Archives of Japan is where the records hold for this Unit 731, and it released the names of 3,607 members that were involved in the unit. It was basically requested by the Shia University of Medical Science that these names be released. So these people's names are out there, and that was in October 2003. So with all this thinking and all this stuff, what does it have you leaving with in your mind right now? What does it have you just... Are you surprised at all, or
No.
are you not?
Nope.
You
Nope, not at
understand
all.
the evilness of people?
History repeating itself. Literally repeating itself.
Do you think there's
It's
ever going to
just-
be a way to not, want to try and hurt somebody else by experimenting on others or doing any of these types of,
No, man, because there's always going to be that certain amount of greed in people's hearts. They always want to be better, Same degree with pride. They always think they are going to be better or than whoever they are else, like the Japanese did with everybody else,
Well, I mean, it's crazy to think that, among all the forces out there, secret government facilities and programs, that someone could just chop somebody's arm off and stick it on the right side of their body. That's just got me baffled. Don't even forget about all the plagues and testing. Just the fact that you could have the brainwashed power to either not know what you're doing or just be ready to do it for your country.
You knew what you were doing, and you did it willingly.
Well, I appreciate you being on this episode of Fill in the Blank, and as dumb as I probably sounded, I'm at least trying to educate people on some things, because if you educate people more on something, they might not know something, might learn something, might go look it up themselves. So if anybody didn't like the way I explained this, please look up the information and try and pick what you can for yourself and get all the information out of it. This was an episode with Tyler Patterson, my boy, Spaceman.
All right, man.